He deserved it for disrespecting me.
You just disrespected the wrong man's wife.
Her spit hit my husband's face before I even reached the porch. It glistened under the afternoon sun. A moment so surreal, it froze the air around us. Claudia Remington didn't flinch. She stood there, chin high, manicured hand clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. Her red heels clicked once against the concrete, defiant. The sound was louder than it should have been. Maybe because it cracked something inside me. People talk about restraint like it's an easy thing, until it's your spouse being humiliated in front of your own home. And she didn't know who I was. She didn't know the man she spit on was married to a police chief. If you've ever felt that flash of disbelief, the kind that burns behind your ribs when someone crosses a line so deep it feels like the world should stop. So stay right here and hit subscribe right now. Because what happened next wasn't just a neighborhood dispute. It was a test of control, power, and the price of keeping your calm when the law is suddenly personal. Claudia's sunglasses caught her reflection in the window, perfectly composed as if she'd rehearsed this act of humiliation. Violation 12B, she said sharply. Unauthorized modifications to the front garden. You people think the rules don't apply just because you're creative. Her tone snapped like static. I felt my pulse thrum in my temples. Mark stood still. The sunlight caught the corner of his trembling hand. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He was raised to believe in quiet dignity, something this board chair clearly mistook for weakness. I stepped closer, my badge still locked away in the top drawer inside. Off-duty or not, instinct took over. My voice came out low. You just committed assault, Mrs. Remington. A flicker, barely visible, crossed her eyes. Fear? No, not yet. That would come later. For now, she tilted her head, her crimson jacket gleaming like blood against the sun. Oh, please, Chief, don't dramatize. A little spit never killed anyone. There it was, the kind of smug dismissal that ignites everything you swore you'd never let out. I forced myself to breathe. Step back, I said evenly, and leave my property. She didn't. Behind her, a few neighbors peeked from their driveways, pretending to check mail, pretending not to record. The enforcer in crimson thrived on that attention. Every confrontation was theater, and she was the star. This neighborhood, she said, voice dripping superiority, was built on standards. If your husband can't handle compliance, perhaps Maple Ridge isn't the place for your lifestyle. That word, lifestyle, she meant it like a slur. My jaw locked. You're out of line. The clipboard queen smirked. No, Chief Cole, you're out of order. This community runs on respect. Learn it. Her heel turned, deliberate. Her perfume lingered, a floral arrogance that hung in the air long after she was gone. Mark wiped his face with the back of his hand, eyes glassy, silent. For the first time since my recovery, I saw something in his expression that broke me. Not pain, shame. That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to be another complaint filed and forgotten. It wasn't just about an HOA form or a garden bed. It was about dignity. His, mine, and everyone she'd stepped on to keep her little kingdom in check. Inside, I closed the door and leaned against it, my chest tight. The house felt smaller than usual. Mark sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-finished watercolor he'd been working on before she arrived. His hand hovered above the brush like he couldn't remember how to hold it. She spit on me, he whispered finally. I know. I didn't do anything. You shouldn't have to. That night, the garden outside seemed almost too quiet. Every breeze against the tulips sounded like something being erased. I stood by the window, watching the solar lights flicker, and I realized she wanted this silence. She wanted control, but she chose the wrong house. Tomorrow, I'd find out exactly how far her reach went, who gave her authority, and what she thought she could get away with. Because I wasn't just a husband this time. I was the law she mocked, and she was about to learn what justice sounds like when it's personal. By morning, the incident had already spread through Maple Ridge like wildfire. One neighbor's security camera caught part of it, just enough to spark whispers. By noon, half the cul-de-sac was divided between disbelief and delight. And at the center of it all, Claudia Remington stood untouchable, painting herself as the victim. The board chair had called an emergency compliance review. Her words, not mine. She'd sent out an HOA-wide email labeling our garden a hazardous obstruction and implying my husband had been aggressive. Aggressive Mark. The same man who apologized to bees when they landed on his flowers. The officer of rules didn't stop there. She copied the city code enforcement office, the property management company, and, just to twist the knife, the neighborhood newsletter editor. The subject line read, "Maintaining civility in Maple Ridge." I sat at the breakfast table, reading every line with a pulse so steady it scared even me. Mark leaned over the counter, his coffee untouched. "She's turning it around on us," he said quietly. I nodded once. "That's her game. Control the story, control the power." He exhaled slowly. "You're not going to let her win?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Outside, the enforcer in crimson strutted past our window like she owned the street. Clipboard in hand, phone pressed to her ear, sunglasses hiding eyes that had no reflection left in them. She gestured at our lawn as if commanding invisible, "All troops." 2 other board members followed her, one scribbling notes, the other filming. I stepped out onto the porch, calm and deliberate. She turned, perfectly on cue. "Ah, Chief Cole," she said with that familiar fake sweetness. "Just the man I was hoping to see." "Funny," I replied. "I was hoping not to." Her smile tightened. "We're documenting violations. The roses exceed height restrictions. The trellis is unapproved. You should have read Section 16. I looked her square in the eye. "Section 16 was revised last quarter. You're citing outdated policy." The clipboard queen blinked. "Excuse me?" I took a step closer, voice low. "You're using regulations that were repealed in January, page 4, paragraph 2. I was one of the witnesses who signed the revision." For the first time, she hesitated. A flicker of recognition passed behind her shades. She hadn't expected pushback this early. The tyrant in heels tilted her chin, recovering. "Well, even if the old clauses were replaced, the sentiment remains. We have standards here." "Standards," I repeated, "or selective enforcement?" Her jaw tensed. "I'll note your tone for the record." "Good," I said. "Make sure you spell it right." A few neighbors had come out now, pretending to tend plants or check mail. I saw Miles Henderson standing near his work truck, frozen halfway between loyalty and conscience. His eyes darted between us. He'd seen what happened yesterday. He knew the truth. But silence was safer. Claudia turned toward him suddenly. "Miles," she said sharply, "make sure you document the fence line. These coal modifications may require removal." He nodded without meeting her gaze. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers trembled around the clipboard. He wasn't the villain here. He was just another pawn in her kingdom of intimidation. The board chair pivoted back to me. "We expect compliance within 72 hours, she said. "Failure to comply will result in daily fines." "Daily fines?" I asked evenly. "Or daily harassment?" Her smile widened, sharp, satisfied. "Call it what you want, Chief, but this community won't bend just because you used to wear a badge." "Used to?" I repeated. "Claudia, don't mistake my vacation for retirement." For the first time, she faltered, just slightly. Her lips parted, then closed again. She turned away quickly, the enforcer in crimson now visibly rattled. Mark's voice came from behind me, soft but firm. "You should leave." The clipboard queen hesitated for one beat too long before clicking away, her heels punctuating every step like an exclamation mark. When they were gone, Mark whispered, "She's escalating." "She's cornered," I corrected. "Cornered people do stupid things." That night, I reviewed the footage one of the neighbors had sent me anonymously. The video didn't capture the spit. It started seconds after, but it caught the aftermath. Her posture, her tone, her smirk. Enough to build a timeline, enough to expose the lie. But I wasn't going to rush, not yet. Power's best weapon isn't force, it's patience. As the footage replayed, I caught one small reflection in the car window behind her. A man's shadow. Miles. Watching. Recording something on his phone before stepping out of frame. That was my first real lead. And it told me one thing with absolute certainty. The officer of rules had forgotten the first law of control. Someone is always watching the enforcer. By the third day, the HOA meeting notice appeared in every mailbox. Bold red font, formal language, and a thin layer of intimidation beneath every sentence. All residents are encouraged to attend. Discussion of community standards and decorum. I knew what that meant. Claudia Remington was about to rewrite history, with herself as the hero. The board chair thrived on spectacle. She understood how to use an audience. Her meetings weren't governance, they were theater. And this one was going to be her biggest performance yet. Mark wanted to skip it. "They're just going to gang up on us," he said, voice trembling as he packed away his art supplies. "She's got the whole board under her spell." "She's got fear," I corrected softly. "Fear fades fast when you stand up to it." I'd seen that truth 100 times in uniform. Bullies crumble when witnesses find courage. And that's exactly what I needed from Miles Henderson. The landscaper had been on edge since the incident. Every time our paths crossed, he avoided eye contact. But today, when I found him at the maintenance shed, his hands were shaking while he adjusted the trimmer belt. "Miles," I said quietly, "you were here that day." He froze. "I don't want to get involved, Chief." "You already are." He sighed, glancing toward the HOA office where the enforcer in crimson was visible through the glass, arguing with another board member, gesturing sharply. Even from a distance, you could feel her control. "I saw her spit," he whispered. "But if I say that out loud, I lose my contract. She'll blacklist me. You don't know how far she goes." "I know exactly how far," I said. "And I know how to stop her. But I need truth, Miles. Just truth." He stared down at the ground. Sweat rolled down his temple, not from heat, but from fear. "I recorded part of it," he muttered. "Not the spit, but right after. She bragged about it. That caught me off guard." "You still have it?" He nodded hesitantly. "On my phone, but she's got eyes everywhere. If she finds out I talked to you—" "She won't," I interrupted, calm but certain. "I've handled people with worse than clipboards and bylaws." His mouth twitched, a near smile. "You really think you can take her down?" "I don't think," I said. "I plan." The clipboard. Queen emerged from the office just as we finished. She spotted me instantly, her expression tightening. "Chief Cole," she called, striding toward us. "Is there a reason you're loitering on community maintenance grounds?" I turned slowly. "Talking to a neighbor. Something you might try someday?" The officer of rules stopped a few feet away, that same crimson jacket blazing against the morning sun. "You're crossing a line," she said. "Harassing staff is grounds for complaint." "Miles doesn't work for you," I said evenly. "He works for the community. There's a difference." Her lips curled. "Oh, you love playing semantics, don't you? Only when someone hides behind paperwork to justify cruelty." The tyrant in heels took another step forward. "Careful, Chief. You're not wearing your badge now." I smiled faintly. "Don't need it." For a moment, we just stood there, power meeting defiance. And behind her confidence, I saw something else flicker. Recognition that this wasn't a man she could intimidate. She turned sharply. "Miles, inside. Now." He hesitated, eyes darting between us. I gave him the smallest nod, permission to leave without guilt. He obeyed, but I could tell from his expression that a line had been crossed inside him too. Fear had cracked into conscience. That evening, I sat beside Mark as he worked quietly on his new painting. The garden was still, the tulips glowing under the dusk light. My phone buzzed once, a text from an unknown number. It was a short video clip. Claudia's voice filled the room. He looked like he wanted to cry. Maybe next time, he'll think twice before talking back. Then laughter, her laughter. Mark's brush froze midair. I turned the phone face down on the table. "That's her," he said softly. "Yeah," I whispered. "That's her." Outside, a storm was building, the kind that starts quiet, with air too heavy to breathe. And as thunder rumbled in the distance, I knew one thing for sure. The board chair had written her own downfall. All I had to do was press play at the right moment. The meeting night arrived like a storm pretending to be calm. The community hall lights buzzed faintly, casting sterile shadows across the white walls lined with framed bylaws. Folding chairs filled every corner, neighbors whispering in pockets of tension. At the front, center stage, stood Claudia Remington. The board chair adjusted her crimson blazer like a uniform of war. She opened the session with that signature smile, polite, polished, poisonous. Before we begin, she said, voice silky through the microphone, I'd like to address the recent, unfortunate misunderstandings involving the Coles property. Misunderstandings. That's what she called spitting on a man. Mark's hand brushed mine under the table. His grip was steady, but his knuckles were white. I leaned closer and whispered, "Let her talk." The enforcer in crimson strutted through her presentation, photos of our garden, highlighted passages of community rules, and false claims about neighborly hostility. Every slide, every word was crafted to rewrite the story, to paint her as the protector of Maple Ridge. But then she made her mistake. She said my husband initiated verbal aggression. And the room shifted, quiet gasps, eyes darting to Mark, who hadn't spoken a single word that day. That lie landed like a slap. The clipboard queen felt the tension too. I saw her pause, adjusting her papers just to stall. I stood up slowly, every movement deliberate. The sound of my chair scraping across the floor cut through the silence like a siren. "Madam Chair," I said. My voice echoed off the walls. "Since you're addressing our family, I'll take the floor." The tyrant in heels arched one brow. "Chief Cole, this isn't a courtroom. You'll wait until the resident comment portion." "Correction," I said, stepping closer. "This is a matter of record, and what you just stated is false." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Claudia's composure cracked for a fraction of a second. "False?" she repeated. "You're accusing me of fabrication?" "I'm stating," I said, "that you slandered my husband in public minutes after committing an act of assault. I have witnesses. And a recording." That last line landed heavy. The officer of rules stiffened. The color drained slightly beneath her foundation. I saw her eyes flick toward Miles, who was seated 2 rows behind her. He couldn't hold her gaze. "You're bluffing," she said, forcing a laugh. "If you had anything, you'd have filed charges." I smiled faintly. "Who said I haven't?" The crowd went silent. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to fade. Somewhere in the back, someone whispered, "He's serious." Mark looked at me, worry and pride tangled together. Claudia Remington's jaw tightened. "This is harassment," she said, voice trembling just enough to betray her. "You're abusing your influence to intimidate a private citizen." I leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with her. "Private citizens don't hide behind policy when they spit on people, Claudia. They apologize." Her lips parted, speechless for the first time since I'd met her. The enforcer in crimson looked down at her notes, but found no defense written there. Finally, she snapped the folder shut. "Moving on," she said sharply. Next agenda item, community safety." But the damage was done. The audience's energy had changed. Whispers filled the air, soft but sharp. Her authority was bleeding out in real time. When the meeting adjourned, people didn't line up to compliment her anymore. They walked out in pairs, murmuring. I stayed behind, watching her gather her papers with jerky, frustrated movements. As I turned to leave, she hissed under her breath, "You think this is over?" I paused in the doorway. "No," I said calmly. "I think it's the first time you've been seen for who you are." Outside, rain had started falling. The parking lot shimmered under the streetlights. Mark slipped his arm around me as we walked toward the car. "You could have destroyed her right there," he said quietly. "Not yet," I replied. "She'll bury herself deeper. I want the whole board to watch it happen." Through the rain-streaked glass, I caught a glimpse of her standing by the window, shoulders tense, eyes hollow. For the first time, the clipboard queen looked cornered, her reflection fractured by water and guilt. She'd built her power on intimidation. Now it was cracking under the weight of exposure, and I hadn't even pressed play yet. By the next morning, the air in Maple Ridge had changed. You could feel it, that uneasy silence that comes after the first crack in a tyrant's armor. Yet, somehow, Claudia Remington managed to reappear as if nothing had happened. The board chair walked the neighborhood in her usual routine, crimson blazer perfectly pressed, clipboard clutched like a weapon. She waved to passing neighbors, smiling too wide, her charm paper thin. But I could tell, she was cornered, and cornered people get sloppy. While she paraded her authority, I was at the precinct. Off-duty, yes, but not out of the game. My former colleagues still respected me, and that respect came with quiet favors. One phone call confirmed what I needed to know. Claudia had filed an official complaint, claiming harassment and intimidation. She even submitted edited clips of our confrontation at the meeting, spliced footage that conveniently erased her worst moments. The enforcer in crimson had crossed from petty to criminal manipulation. When I got home, Mark was pacing by the kitchen island, his phone glowing with messages. "You won't believe this," he said, handing it over. "She sent a community alert, says we're under review for creating a hostile environment." I read the email twice, jaw tightening. "She's escalating fast," Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. "What's the endgame for her? Just humiliation?" "No," I said quietly. "Control, always control." That night, I sat in my study, reviewing Miles's recording again. I slowed down the audio, isolating her voice. At 18 seconds, you could clearly hear her say, "He deserved it. I told him I run this place." Her tone wasn't defensive. It was proud. That clip wasn't just evidence of arrogance. It was proof of malice. But it wasn't enough for a case yet. I needed corroboration, someone inside the board, and that's when fate intervened. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A woman's voice, shaky but determined, whispered, "Chief Cole, you don't know me. I'm Dana, secretary for the HOA. I think you're right about Claudia." I sat up straight. "Talk to me." "She's been rewriting meeting minutes," Dana said. "Deleting records, altering votes, falsifying fines. The board thinks it's procedural, but it's not. It's fraud, and it's catching up to her." I stayed silent for a moment, letting her keep talking. Her guilt spilled out between breaths. "I was in the office the day she spit on your husband. She told the treasurer she'd handled the problem personally. I didn't know what that meant until I saw the video." My hand tightened around the phone. "Do you still have access to those files?" "I do," Dana whispered. "But if she finds out..." "She won't," I interrupted. "You're protected. You're doing the right thing." She hesitated, then said something that made my pulse quicken. "Check the expense reports from last quarter. Look for the vendor name Red Leaf. It's fake. That's how she's funneling HOA funds into her own consulting company." That was it. The thread I needed. The clipboard queen wasn't just power hungry. She was stealing from the very people she claimed to protect. And I had the means to expose it. The next morning, I drove past her house. She was in the driveway barking orders at a landscaper about the symmetry of compliance. When she spotted me, her expression sharpened into that cold, professional smile. "Morning, Chief," she said sweetly. "Lovely day for staying within property lines." "Lovely day for audits, too," I replied. Her smirk faltered, just barely. "Excuse me?" "Just saying," I added. "Paper trails have a way of outlasting fences." Her mask cracked. For half a second, the tyrant in heels froze, her clipboard lowering like a shield that suddenly felt heavy. She didn't know how much I knew, but she sensed the balance shifting. As I drove off, I caught her reflection in my rearview mirror. The enforcer in crimson stood still, eyes locked on me, as if trying to calculate whether she was looking at a threat or her reckoning. That evening, I pieced everything together: video proof, false invoices, witness testimony. The case was building itself. All that remained was timing. Because in my experience, justice isn't loud. It's quiet, surgical, and patient. And for Claudia Remington, the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Ridge, the clock had just started ticking. By sunrise, the air in Maple Ridge felt charged, like a fuse waiting to catch. I'd spent most of the night laying out everything on my dining table: printouts, recordings, the falsified red leaf invoices that Dana had quietly sent over. The evidence painted a perfect picture of deception. Claudia Remington wasn't just a bully in a crimson blazer. She was a thief wrapped in authority. But what made it dangerous was how good she was at it. The board chair didn't just lie. She built systems around her lies. Fake receipts matched real projects. False minutes looked official. Her control wasn't chaos. It was design. And if I wanted to expose her, I needed precision. Mark walked into the kitchen, still in his robe, eyes heavy from another sleepless night. "You're not letting this go, are you?" I looked up from the documents. "Would you?" He sighed softly, then crossed his arms. "She spit on me, yes. But she's turned it into your war. And I know that look. You're gonna make this bigger than both of us." "She made it bigger," I said. "I'm just holding up a mirror." He nodded quietly, then pointed to the stack of papers. "You really think this will stick?" I met his gaze. It's not about making it stick. It's about making it undeniable. By noon, I was at the community center, pretending to review routine maintenance logs while waiting for Miles. He arrived looking uneasy, baseball cap pulled low. "You sure this is safe?" he muttered. "Only if you don't look scared," I replied. "The clipboard queen smells fear." He snorted despite himself. "She called me this morning, said she expects loyalty from vendors, whatever that means." "It means she's rattled," I said, sliding a USB drive toward him. "I need you to leave this in her office computer during her next meeting. No one will know." He looked at me like I'd handed him a grenade. "What's on it?" "Proof," I said simply. "Every file she's doctored, every transaction that doesn't match. It'll download automatically to an encrypted log." He hesitated. "And if she catches me?" I leaned forward, steady. "She won't, but if she does, she'll finally know what it's like to feel powerless." That seemed to land. He pocketed the drive and nodded once before slipping out. Later that evening, while the sun dipped behind the rooftops, the enforcer in crimson showed up outside my gate. She didn't ring the bell. She leaned against the post, arms folded, expression unreadable. I stepped outside, crossing my arms to mirror her. Didn't expect a house call. "I like to keep things personal," she said, voice calm but edged. "You've been busy, Chief, asking questions, snooping in financial records, intimidating staff." "Funny," I said. "That's the same list your HOA complaint had, just reversed." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're playing a dangerous game. Only if you have something to lose." That cracked her composure. Her jaw tightened, her nails tapping against the clipboard. "I built this community. You think you can take it apart because your husband's pride got hurt?" I took a slow step forward. "He didn't lose pride that day, Claudia. You did. You lost decency. And I'm not here to take apart your community." It was the silence after Claudia Remington's visit that told me I'd struck a nerve. The enforcer in crimson had left my property with a smile sharp enough to draw blood. But behind that smirk was panic. I knew the look well. It's the expression of someone who's run out of moves but hasn't realized it yet. The next morning, I stopped by Dana's place, the conflicted witness who'd risked everything to tell me the truth. Her blinds were half closed, her posture tense when she opened the door. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "She's getting worse, isn't she?" I asked. Dana nodded, ushering me inside. Her living room smelled of stale coffee and fear. "Claudia cornered me after the last board meeting," she said. "Told me she knew I'd been chatting with the wrong people. She said the board was considering disciplinary action." "That's intimidation," I said flatly. "She's calling it policy enforcement," Dana replied, voice cracking. "She knows I can't afford to lose my job. I think she's trying to scare me into deleting everything I told you about the red leaf invoices." I crouched near her desk, where a small flash drive sat beside a mug. "This it?" She nodded shakily. "Every transaction from the past year. And one more thing. I recorded her yesterday." My eyes lifted. "You recorded her?" Dana's hands trembled as she handed over her phone. She hit play. The audio was fuzzy at first, then Claudia's voice cut through, cold and deliberate. "If anyone asks, those vendor transfers were approved by the treasurer, and if they don't like it, I'll make sure they're fined into silence. You know how these sheep work." That was the break I needed. It wasn't just fraud now, it was intent. I looked at Dana and said quietly, "You just did the bravest thing in this entire neighborhood." Her eyes welled up. "I just want her gone. I'm tired of feeling small." "You won't feel small much longer," I promised. "But you need to trust me. I'll protect you when this goes public." When I left her house, the rain had started again. Soft, steady, cleansing. It felt like the calm before impact. That afternoon, word spread that the clipboard queen had called an emergency board session. No agenda, no notice. Just a gathering in the HOA office that evening. Classic move. Control through surprise. I arrived early, parking across the street. Through the glass windows, I could see her moving briskly around the conference table, setting folders, adjusting her hair in the reflection of the door. Power was her costume, and she wore it like armor. As the meeting began, she took the head seat and slammed her gavel with theatrical precision. "Order," she said. "Tonight we're addressing false allegations and community safety. Certain residents have been spreading malicious rumors against the board's integrity." Her eyes flicked toward me. The tyrant in heels was ready for war. I let her speak, let her drown in her own script. Every word she said was a performance. We are a lawful body. We hold ourselves to the highest standards. This community deserves stability. Then, as her voice droned on, my phone buzzed, a text from Dana. Check your email now. I opened it under the table. One attachment, a video file. The title, Office Camera, Unauthorized Access. I pressed play quietly. The footage showed Claudia in the board office late at night, alone, typing on her computer, opening a bank portal, transferring funds to the Red Leaf account, time-stamped, dated, proof of embezzlement beyond denial. I looked up at her, still monologuing about accountability. My chest burned with restrained anger. When she paused to sip water, I stood. "Madam Chair," I said. The room went still. Her tone dropped. "You're out of order, Chief." I ignored her. "Since we're discussing integrity, maybe we should all review this." I tapped the screen, projecting the video to the main display. The first few seconds passed before she realized what she was looking at, her face drained of color. That's illegal surveillance," she stammered. "No," I said. "That's your office's own security feed, the one you forgot to erase." Gasps filled the room. Board members exchanged shocked looks. One man whispered, "Oh my God." The officer of rules clutched her clipboard like a lifeline, knuckles white. "You can't prove that's me," she said weakly. "Actually," I replied, stepping closer, "you did that yourself, by signing your name at the bottom of every stolen transaction." For the first time, Claudia Remington had nothing to say. No script, no power, only silence. And in that silence, Maple Ridge finally began to wake up. The boardroom erupted the second the video ended. A dozen voices rose at once, disbelief, outrage, and fear colliding like a storm breaking over glass. But through the chaos, Claudia Remington didn't move. The enforcer in crimson sat frozen, her clipboard trembling slightly under her hand, the same hand that had once slammed fines and threats across my doorstep. Now she was the one under scrutiny. "Turn that off!" she barked, snapping back to life. Her voice cracked with that brittle authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is a violation of privacy. You have no legal—" "Correction," I said, calm and level. "It's a public record, HOA property, meaning our property." Gasps swept the room again. One of the older board members, Leonard, stood and faced her. "Claudia, is this true? Those transfers, those vendors, Red Leaf Consulting?" The clipboard queen's eyes flicked to me, then to Leonard. "I don't have to answer that without counsel." "Counsel?" another member echoed. "You're not the government, Claudia. You're the HOA." That was the moment the illusion began to crumble. The officer of rules, who had ruled through fear, fines, and fabricated authority, suddenly looked small beneath the fluorescent lights, still dangerous, but shrinking. I gathered my files and stepped forward. "For months you've bullied this community, falsified fines, and pocketed our dues through a fake vendor account. You assaulted my husband. You intimidated witnesses. And now the board has the evidence to act." She shot up from her chair, crimson blazer flaring like a flag of defiance. "You think this makes you a hero, Chief? You're a disgrace, using your badge, even off-duty, to humiliate a woman over paperwork." "Paperwork doesn't spit on people," I said, voice tightening. "And paperwork doesn't steal $22,000 in homeowner funds." Her composure wavered. The tyrant in heels looked around, realizing she no longer had control of the room. The same neighbors who used to flinch at her clipboard were staring now, not in fear, but disgust. She tried again, weaker this time. "You can't prove intent. The board approved those budgets." "Except you are the board," Leonard interrupted. "You've been signing approvals under vacant seats for months. We checked." That hit her like a gut punch. Her hand dropped from the clipboard, fingers twitching. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I built this neighborhood from the ground up. I made it safe." "You made it silent," I replied. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan and her unsteady breathing. Then she laughed, a quiet, broken sound. "You all think you're free now? You have no idea how much this place costs without me. You'll drown in lawsuits and liens. You need someone like me." I looked around the room, at faces once divided, now unified by truth. No, I said. We need accountability. That's when Dana stepped forward from the back corner. Her voice was soft but steady. And I've already filed the reports with the county and the Department of Housing. Claudia's head snapped toward her. You what? Dana stood taller. You told me no one would believe me. You were wrong. The enforcer in Crimson's face twisted. Shock, fury, fear, then smoothed into a hollow calm. You think this ends me? She hissed. You've just signed the death warrant for this entire HOA. No, I said. We just signed its rebirth certificate. The gavel Leonard once let her wield now sat abandoned on the table. He lifted it slowly, looked around, then struck it once. Effective immediately, he declared. Claudia Remington is suspended pending legal review. The sound of that gavel echoed like a door slamming shut. She glared at me as security escorted her toward the exit. You think you've won, Chief Cole, she sneered. But I built this place in my image. You'll see me in every rule, every clause, every nail in your pretty little fence. I stepped aside to let her pass. Then maybe it's time we rebuild from the ground up. The door clicked behind her. Silence fell again. Dana's voice broke it. What happens now? Now, I exhaled, now we clean house. But as I packed up my evidence, I glanced through the glass window. Outside, under the amber streetlight, Claudia Remington stood by her car, making a phone call, her expression eerily calm. The clipboard queen might have fallen, but something in her eyes said, this wasn't over. Not yet. I thought it was over after Claudia Remington was escorted out that night. For a few quiet hours, it almost felt like victory. Neighbors texting thank yous, Dana finally sleeping without her phone clutched like a lifeline, Mark smiling for the first time in weeks. But power doesn't surrender. It recalculates. And the enforcer in Crimson wasn't the kind of woman to fade quietly into the background she once ruled. By morning, she'd already made her move. An email from the HOA legal committee hit every resident's inbox. Pending investigation, former chairwoman Remington retains her right to contest the allegations. It was written in perfect legalese, her signature style, cold, layered, and subtly threatening. At the bottom, one line stood out. Evidence obtained through unlawful surveillance will not be admissible in any formal proceeding. Mark read it over my shoulder. She's going to bury this in red tape. I nodded. She's turning it into a chess match, which means she's still in the game. That night, I met with Leonard and Dana at the local diner, neutral ground where the scent of burnt coffee masked the tension. Leonard had that weary look of someone who'd lived under her thumb too long. She's got connections, you know, he said. Lawyers who will work pro bono just to keep her name clean. Then we don't fight her in her arena, I replied. We fight her in ours. Dana looked up from her cup. Meaning? Public exposure, I said. If she's betting on silence, we use the one weapon she can't control. Light. Leonard frowned. You mean the press? No, I said, pulling out my phone. Social media. I've got every file she ever falsified, and now the world needs to see it. Dana hesitated. That could backfire. She'll say it's defamation. Then she'll have to prove she's innocent, I said, and she can't. But before I could post anything, my phone buzzed again. An unknown number, followed by a message. Chief Cole, this is Claudia. You've made a mistake bigger than you realize. Meet me at the clubhouse at midnight. Alone. I showed the text to Dana. She went pale. Don't go. I have to, I said. She's baiting me, but she's also desperate. Desperate people talk. By midnight, the clubhouse was empty. Lights dim, except for the glow of the exit sign. Rain tapped softly against the windows. And there she was, the tyrant in heels, sitting at the head of the long table like she'd never left. Didn't think you'd show, she said. You texted me, I replied, staying near the doorway. She smirked. Still, following orders, even when they come from your enemies. Cut the games, Claudia, I said. You called me here for a reason. The clipboard queen stood slowly, her reflection flickering in the rain-streaked glass. You think I'm finished because of one video? You think I didn't prepare for this? She slid a flash drive across the table. That's your husband's statement from the night I assaulted him. You didn't file it with the department, did you? My stomach tightened. You've been digging. I don't dig, she said coolly. I document. And right now, your own omission looks a lot like professional misconduct. I stepped closer. You'd threaten a police chief? I'd threaten anyone who tries to ruin me, the officer of rules hissed. You underestimate what I built here. These people needed control. Without me, this place falls apart. That's the problem, I said. You mistook control for order. They don't need you to run their lives. Her eyes flashed. No, they need someone strong enough to stop people like you. Before I could answer, lightning flared outside, illuminating her face and something else behind her. A file box half open on the counter. Inside, a stack of unshredded financial records. She saw my glance. Those are confidential. Not anymore, I said, pulling out my phone to record. She lunged forward, snatching the box. Papers scattered across the table, spilling her empire of fraud in plain view. Checks, receipts, signatures, everything she'd spent years hiding. She froze, realizing her mistake. You can't use any of that. I met her eyes, voice steady. You just gave me permission by trying to destroy it. For the first time, the enforcer in crimson looked truly afraid. Outside, the rain began to pour harder, drumming against the glass like applause. You're done, Claudia, I said, gathering the evidence. And this time, it won't be a board meeting that ends you. It'll be a courtroom. Her voice followed me as I walked out. You'll regret this, Cole. You'll regret crossing me. But even her fury sounded hollow now, like an echo fading down an empty hallway. By the next morning, I knew Claudia Remington was cornered, but she didn't act like it. The enforcer in crimson had turned her humiliation into a performance. Overnight, she'd sent a carefully worded letter to every resident in Maple Ridge, painting herself as the victim of targeted harassment by rogue homeowners. She accused me of abusing my position as a law enforcement officer and claimed Dana's evidence was illegally obtained. She didn't just fight dirty, she fought with precision. When I stepped outside to grab the mail, half the neighborhood watched through their curtains. Some looked grateful, others uneasy, like they didn't know who to believe. That's what the clipboard queen did best. Twist. Truth into fog. Inside the envelope was a copy of her letter and a personal note at the bottom, handwritten in perfect cursive. You may wear a badge, but I write the rules. I stared at those words for a long time. They weren't just arrogance. They were a threat. That afternoon, I met Dana and Leonard in my garage. Neutral ground, quiet, private. Leonard had his laptop open, displaying the HOA's internal communications we'd managed to recover from the clubhouse computer before Claudia tried to destroy it. There's more, he said, scrolling fast. She's been emailing an attorney named Grayson Pierce. Look, contingency plan in the event of forced removal. She's setting up a shadow board, a fake election. She's going to reappoint herself through loopholes. Dana groaned. Of course she is. The officer of rules never quits. She's already scheduling the meeting, Leonard said. Friday night at the town hall. That gave us less than 48 hours. We can't let her get away with this, I said. But this time, we don't just counter, we expose, publicly. I knew exactly what to do. We reached out to every resident who'd ever been fined unfairly. Every family she'd humiliated at meetings, every homeowner she'd targeted with her clipboard and smug smirk. We asked them to show up, to speak up, to stand up. And by Friday evening, they did. The town hall parking lot overflowed with cars. The rain from earlier in the week had cleared, leaving the air sharp and heavy with anticipation. Inside, rows of folding chairs faced the podium, where Claudia stood, immaculate as ever, red blazer crisp, posture commanding. The tyrant in heels had returned to her stage. She looked right at me as I entered. I was wondering if you'd show, she said smoothly. Come to watch democracy at work? Democracy, I echoed. Interesting word for someone who forged ballots. Her smile faltered for half a second before she masked it with charm. Oh, Chief, you've been misled by hysterics. Tonight's about unity, not vengeance. But unity wasn't what the crowd came for. Murmurs rippled through the room, whispers of resentment, of years of fear. I waited until she raised her gavel. Before we begin, she announced, I'd like to acknowledge that certain individuals have spread defamatory accusations. I stepped forward. You mean evidence? Her tone sharpened. You're not recognized to speak. I turned toward the crowd instead. Then, I'll speak to the people who actually live here. I lifted the projector remote, and behind her, the wall flickered to life. A slideshow of every fine she'd issued, every fake invoice tied to Red Leaf Consulting, every fraudulent approval with her signature. The crowd gasped. Claudia spun around, face draining of color. "You can't show that?" "Oh, I can," I said, "because it's already been filed with the county clerk, and as of this morning, Maple Ridge HOA's finances are under forensic audit." The room exploded in noise, applause, shouts, disbelief. "Sit down," she yelled, slamming her gavel. "You don't have authority here." I met her gaze evenly. "No, Claudia, you don't." Dana rose from the back row, voice trembling but firm. "I second that." Neighbors began standing, one after another. "I second it." "Me too." "Get her out." The board chair's gavel hit the table one final time, a hollow echo of fading power. "You'll regret this," she hissed through clenched teeth. "Every last one of you." "Maybe," I said quietly, "but at least we'll finally be free." She tried to speak again, but her words drowned under the thunder of the vote. Hands raised across the room, unanimous. Claudia Remington, the self-proclaimed Queen of Order, was officially removed. She stood there for a long moment, trembling, lips parting, like she might still find a way to twist the moment in her favor. But all she found was silence. And in that silence, the people she once ruled turned their backs on her. The tyrant in heels finally had to walk her own lonely path home. The next 48 hours unfolded like a slow earthquake. News of Claudia Remington's removal spread through Maple Ridge faster than rainwater on cracked pavement. Every group chat, every porch conversation, every morning jog around the lake carried her name. But, for the first time, it wasn't fear driving those whispers. It was disbelief and relief. Still, I knew the clipboard queen wouldn't accept defeat quietly. People like her don't disappear. They re-emerge through loopholes. So, when the county scheduled the official public hearing to finalize the HOA audit, I expected her to appear. What I didn't expect was how far she'd go to rewrite the ending. The hall was packed, residents shoulder to shoulder, news crews setting up tripods, the low thrum of curiosity hanging in the air. Dana stood beside me, clutching a folder of witness statements. Leonard adjusted his tie like he was about to face a firing squad. And then, right on cue, the doors swung open. Claudia Remington stepped in like royalty returning from exile. The enforcer in crimson had traded her signature blazer for a darker, almost funereal red. Her posture was immaculate, her expression serene. Too serene. She carried no clipboard this time, just a single black binder pressed to her chest. "Evening, Chief," she said as she passed. "Still playing detective?" "Just making sure justice shows up," I replied. She smiled faintly. "Oh, it always does. It just depends on who defines it." The chair of the hearing called us to order. Cameras flashed. The county inspector opened with a summary of findings. Unapproved expenditures, falsified invoices, personal accounts linked to HOA funds. Each item hit like a hammer, and with every blow, the tyrant in heels didn't flinch until they reached the newest discovery. Additionally, the inspector read, "The investigation found recent activity in the HOA's emergency fund, transfers made after Ms. Remington's removal." A ripple of confusion ran through the crowd. Claudia tilted her head innocently. "That's impossible. I haven't had access in weeks." But Leonard turned his laptop around, the live feed projected onto the hall screen. "There was remote access from your personal tablet last night at 11:37 p.m. The calm cracked. For the first time, her voice wavered. That's fabricated. Someone's framing me." Dana stepped forward. "Actually, it's geotagged from your home network." The room erupted. Neighbors whispered, some gasped, others cheered quietly. Claudia's poise collapsed into fury. She slammed her binder on the table, papers spilling like confession. "You all think this is justice? You don't understand what I protected you from. Without order, this place falls apart." I met her glare. Order built on fear isn't order, it's captivity. Her eyes glistened, rage and panic swirling. "Do you really think you're better? A cop using his badge for vengeance?" "This isn't vengeance," I said. "This is accountability." The officer of rules laughed bitterly. "You'll regret exposing me. You'll see chaos eat this neighborhood alive." "Maybe," I said, stepping closer. "But at least it'll be our chaos. Honest, imperfect, free." The inspector cleared his throat, reading the final statement. Based on the evidence presented, Claudia Remington is permanently barred from holding any position within Maple Ridge's governance. A motion will follow to dissolve and reform the HOA under new leadership. Applause broke out, not loud at first, but building, wave by wave. Neighbors who once avoided each other clasped hands. Dana wiped away tears. Leonard exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a year. Claudia just stood there, eyes glassy. For a fleeting moment, I saw something almost human. Regret, maybe. Then she straightened, lifting her chin. "You may think you've won, Chief Cole," she said quietly, "but you've only broken the illusion. Without it, they'll destroy each other." "Then we'll rebuild," I said. "And this time, it won't be in your image." She stared for a long second, then gathered her scattered papers and walked out, heels echoing like punctuation marks on the story she'd written too long. Outside, through the glass, I saw her pause under the flickering streetlight. She looked back once, a silhouette framed by the rain. No smirk, no triumph, just silence. Inside, the inspector raised his gavel. "Meeting adjourned." Dana turned to me. "Is it really over?" "Almost," I said. "One more thing left to do." I reached for my badge on the table, the metal cool against my palm. For months, I'd kept it out of this fight to prove that power doesn't come from position. It comes from principle. Now, I clipped it back on. "If you've ever watched someone abuse authority," I said softly, glancing toward the cameras, "you know exactly why we stood up tonight. Because silence is surrender, and we're done surrendering." And as the hall emptied, thunder rolled across the horizon like applause from the sky. The night after Claudia Remington's fall was quiet, unnervingly quiet. For months, Maple Ridge had lived under the rhythm of her control. The weekly HOA emails, the clipboard checks, the threats masked as policy. Now there was only silence, and it felt like the neighborhood was learning how to breathe again. I walked the perimeter of my property, flashlight in hand, the sound of sprinklers whispering through the lawns. The fence, the one she'd once demanded I remove for aesthetic violations, still stood tall, defiant under the pale moonlight. Every board was a reminder of the stand we'd taken. Dana joined me halfway through my walk, her arms crossed against the cool breeze. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" she said softly. "It's over, but it doesn't feel real." "It'll take time," I said. "Control leaves fingerprints. People like Claudia don't just vanish. They linger in the habits they taught others to obey." She nodded. "Do you think she'll come back?" "She'll try," I said. "The enforcer in Crimson doesn't know how to live without power, but now everyone knows who she really is. That's something she can't rewrite." A week later, the new HOA election was held in the community park, the same place where she once lectured residents about visual harmony. This time, the air felt lighter. Kids played near the fountain, neighbors talked freely, and the clipboard queen's name wasn't whispered with fear anymore. It was remembered like a cautionary tale. Leonard approached the microphone, cleared his throat, and smiled. "Before we begin nominations, I'd like to acknowledge someone who reminded us what accountability looks like. Chief Cole, you showed us that standing up doesn't always mean shouting louder. Sometimes it means just not backing down." Applause rose, genuine and warm. I nodded in thanks, but my eyes drifted to the far edge of the crowd. There she was. Claudia Remington stood near the old oak tree, wearing dark sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Her crimson jacket was gone, replaced with a muted beige coat. But I'd have recognized that posture anywhere. The tyrant in heels was watching from a distance, expression unreadable. For a second, our eyes met. No words, no smirk, just silence. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing between the parked cars like a ghost who'd finally lost her haunt. Later that evening, as the sun set over the ridge, I sat on my porch with Dana and Leonard. The air carried the scent of cut grass and freedom. Leonard chuckled quietly. "Hard to believe all this started with a fence." "HOA wars always start small," I said. "Then someone like her comes along and convinces everyone that rules are the same as justice." Dana leaned forward. "And you convince them otherwise." I took a slow breath. "No, they convinced themselves. I just gave them permission to see her lies." She smiled faintly. "You ever going to tell her it wasn't personal?" "It was personal," I said. But not in the way she thought. It wasn't about pride, it was about peace. The officer of rules had once said Maple Ridge would collapse without her order. She was wrong. The neighborhood didn't collapse. It bloomed. Gardens that were once regulated to color codes now overflowed with individuality. Porch lights glowed later into the night. People waved again. Control had been replaced by community. Fear had been replaced by choice. Still, I couldn't help but wonder where she went. Whether she was sitting somewhere, replaying the moment the crowd turned against her, realizing that power built on intimidation always crumbles the moment courage speaks. As the first fireflies blinked in the twilight, I reached for my phone and hit record. "Wherever you're watching from," I said quietly, "remember this. No one is untouchable, not even the ones who write the rules. The moment you stop being afraid to question authority, the bullies lose their footing. The second you stand tall, the tyrants start to tremble." Dana looked over and smiled. "That your new message?" "It's not a message," I said. "It's a warning." The porch light flickered, catching the reflection of the fence, the same one that started everything. And in that glow, I saw what victory really looked like. Not revenge, not humiliation, just peace earned through resilience. I turned back to the camera, finishing the thought. If you've ever been pushed around by someone hiding behind power, let this story remind you, strength isn't in control, it's in standing your ground. A pause, a faint breeze, the sound of laughter from a distant yard. "And if you believe in justice that doesn't flinch," I added with a slight smile, "you're in the right place. Subscribe, share your story in the comments, and tell me, where are you watching from?" Because this wasn't just my fight anymore. It belonged to every homeowner who'd ever been silenced by a clipboard, every neighbor who'd ever felt powerless under a rule book written by someone who forgot what fairness meant. Claudia Remington taught us that control can masquerade as care, but in the end, truth always unmasks the tyrant, and Maple Ridge finally remembered what freedom sounds like, the quiet hum of peace where fear used to live.